Iran is seeking their own interests. Gulf regions, they are in a different world. Egypt is in a different world. No one is actually combining their agendas against what's happening in Gaza, which amounted to the level of genocide.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, teman-teman sekalian, tim podcast Gaza Media viewers. Kali ini gue ada di Istanbul bersama dengan salah seorang komentator politik Turki dan juga pengamat internasional dari Turki yang bekerja sebagai presiden atau bukan presiden, sebenarnya sebagai pemimpin redaksi dari Turkiye Daily bernama İlker Sezer. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
So we just talk about our topic, right?
Yeah, sure.
So we're gonna start our conversation about maybe from the event, let's say in the neighboring country of Turkey. This is Syria.
Yeah.
People see that actually after the president of America said that the fall of Bashar al-Assad is a successful work done from the Turkish government.
Yeah.
But actually, how Turkish people see this event? Are they satisfied? Are they seeing this as a positive stuff from Turkey?
Well, for ordinary Turkish citizens, this is something that affected their daily lives, to be honest. Because there is a refugee crisis in Turkey, and they see this event from this perspective. They see if the fall of Assad is going to lead to the return of Syrians to their countries. Because the anti-Syrian sentiment in Turkey is something real, something very concrete. In the presidential elections in 2023, it was one of the biggest issues that was discussed, and that affected people's voting behavior. So it is from this perspective, it's important. But I don't think, well, to be honest, to me, it's a success. The fall of Assad, because it was an objective of Turkish foreign policy for a long time. And despite there was a process between Turkey and Assad to maybe come to terms and may sign a deal, and there was a talk of Erdogan and Assad meeting.
Astana deals, Astana talk for...
Yeah, after that there was a period of talks between low-ranking Turkish and Syrian officials. Then there was talk of the possibility of a meeting between Assad and Erdogan. It didn't happen. From a state perspective, it's a success. But for everyday Turks, I don't think they view it as a big success. But I mean, it affected Erdogan's popularity, I would say. Because this is something that Erdogan was advocating for years, and he was calling for the oust of Syria's former President Assad. It never happened. Then there was this refugee issue. Then suddenly there was this operation reportedly supported by Turkey. Then people were like, "Oh, Erdogan was right. Erdogan was playing the long game." So politically, in terms of domestic politics, it helped Erdogan.
Very much.
Yeah, very much so.
So, from your point of view, after the fall of Bashar al-Assad, how the neighboring countries, like especially the superpowers like the America, Russia, European countries, see the Turkish power now after the success to topple Bashar al-Assad? Do you see any change of perspective from those countries toward Turkey?
Yes and no. Very complex issue. For Russia, it was a defeat. It was a defeat, and they were threatening Turkey with refugee exodus.
After the fall of Bashar?
No, before. They had this card to play against Turkey. Like whenever there was a big crisis in Syria before Assad's fall, they were saying, okay, they were not saying it explicitly, of course, But you understand from the rhetoric of the Russian officials, including the foreign ministry, they were implying that a new refugee exodus inside Turkey can start with the Russian bombing in Idlib. So this threat was removed. Turkey's hand against Russia is very much, it became very much easier, to be honest. It helped Turkey also to become a much stronger player in Ukraine. For US, they were caught off guard. And they were caught off guard, and they couldn't develop a policy with regards to Syria for a long time, and this is because it was the end of Biden's era, and it wasn't appropriate for the US to develop a very precise policy with regards to Syria, because I mean one term was ending, one term was starting, so they waited for Trump basically. For Trump explicitly stated that Turkey was the mastermind behind the operation in Syria that led to the overthrow of Assad. But I think Turkey's image also got bigger in the eyes of Russia and also US.
But does Russia especially, does they still have like a card to play with Turkey?
They have so many cards. I mean, it's a giant country. Their economy is not very vibrant and diverse, but they have so many cards to play. I mean, they are sending gas, they are buying Turkish food, and many Turkish companies are investing in Russia in different sectors, including beverages and some other construction sectors.
So they still can threat Turkey with these cards?
I mean, of course. Turkey has also many cards, of course. But I mean, the biggest threat from Russia to Turkey has been this refugee threat, because they were bombing Idlib, and the 2.5 million people were trapped in Idlib, and their only exit was Turkey. So whenever there was a big crisis in Syria, they were actually bombing some strategic areas in Idlib, which may lead to the influx of Syrians into Turkey. So it was the biggest threat. Now it's removed.
And beside those Western powers and like also Russia, how do you see? Are you seeing that we are talking about the Arab countries now,
okay,
right? After the downfall of Bashar al-Assad, especially countries like Saudi and Egypt and UAE, how do you see their stance toward Turkey right now?
With regards to Syria?
Yeah, with regard, are they seeing Turkey as a threat that will instigate the new Arab Spring from being happen?
Yeah, I don't think that Turkey's foreign policy is now like as it was before, like 2013, 2011 period. There was a period in Turkish foreign policy where actually Turkish officials were trying to insert power through different political channels in different Arab countries, like in Syria, in Egypt, in different countries. I think Turkish foreign policy became much more logic-based and much more interest-based, and it's more realistic right now. So Arab countries, I mean, it's much better compared to last 4 or 5 years.
The relation, right?
The relations are much better. And one of the reasons for that is Turkey's economic crisis, because Turkey suffered a very major economic crisis since 2019, I'll say. And the solution for that was lots of liquidity, okay, like the investment and other like different forms of investment, of course. And because, you know, the Gulf countries, they have lots of liquidity in their pocket. Turkey basically switched this ideology-based foreign policy to a much more interest-based,
pragmatic-based, right?
Yes, foreign policy, and now actually we are seeing huge investments from Gulf countries, not to the amount of that Donald Trump got from Gulf, of course, but I mean
600 trillion.
This number is not realistic, of course, but I mean much bigger amounts than Turkey got, of course. So this is the issue.
So they see Turkey they are staying. You know, but this Arab Gulf country, they still see Turkey as a reliable partner for doing business, right? Even though with Erdogan.
Erdogan is a very business-minded leader.
Right.
I mean, he likes to do business. And despite many crises that Turkey has been through with so many countries, if you see at the trade data, You see the businesses are going, business is working. Even when Turkey had so many problems with Egypt after 2013, with the coup of Al-Sisi, you see that there is a gas trade. Turkey was buying lots of LNG from Egypt, and you see that trade was going on. It never leads to the collapse of trade. But now, for example, after the rapprochement between Turkey and Egypt, you see that trade is booming. Hundreds of Turkish textile business, they are moving to Egypt because the cotton is very cheap, electricity is very cheap, land is very cheap, low taxes. Lots of gold companies, they are moving to Egypt. So now the trade is booming. And for Gulf countries, Turkey is a reliable trade business, trade center.
And why is that? Because of the geographical...
Because Turkey's regulations are reliable. Turkey is, if you invest in Turkey, it's highly regulated. If you don't deal with the crooks, then your money will be safe. Turkey's banking industry is very, very highly developed. So it's not a country that you cannot rely on in terms of your money. So and they are aware of that. They made so much money by investing in Turkey, and they know that. So that's the reason.
Now, while you mentioned about Erdogan's really is a person who is very fond of doing business, right? And you say that even though Turkey used to have a very crisis in relationship with Egypt, but still have a strong economic cooperation.
Yeah.
Is it true that this is also happening in what's still running in Gaza now? Even Turkey said they are cutting economic ties with Israel, but many critics say Turkey is still doing the trade with Israel even with an indirect way. Is it true?
There are some things that you cannot actually, in business, I'm talking about business, there are some things that you cannot prevent. For example, Turkey, to a very large extent, especially official sources, they don't do any business with Israel. Okay, it's a dumb business, and there is no question about that. But there are some business special features with regards to doing business with other countries. Let's say, if you import oil from Azerbaijan to a Turkish port, and if a ship comes to the port and takes the oil, you may not question where the oil is going.
That's the argument, right?
Yeah, that's the argument. This is what's happening mostly with regards to Israel. This is the way how the oil is being sold in international markets. You have no responsibility after a ship comes and takes your oil and waits in Mediterranean for 2-3 weeks and then changes routes and goes to Israel. So this is something that's happening mostly. To a very large extent, Turkish companies stopped doing business with Israel. There were some long contracts. Because, remember, what happened in Gaza, October 7th, there was a period of rapprochement between Turkey and Israel.
Since the Mafi Marmara incident, right?
No. Marmara is much earlier.
Okay.
I'm talking about right before October 7th, what happened in Gaza. Right before that, there was a rapprochement between Turkey and Israel. Okay? And during this rapprochement, high-level officials from Turkey and Israel, they were having meetings. And actually, a meeting between Netanyahu and Erdogan was expected. I'm talking 2 years ago, okay?
Before the event, right?
Yeah, and before that period, lots of Turkish companies invested in Israel in some projects, especially energy sector. So it wasn't so easy for them to cancel it at once, because they invested in companies, they have to sell their stakes, they have long-term contracts. If they don't serve these contracts, then they will lose lots of money in courts.
In court?
Yeah, of course. Let's say you signed a contract with a company in Israel for, let's say, 2 years, then you say, okay, something is happening in Gaza and I'm not gonna serve my contract, then this company will go to international arbitration court and take all your money, you understand? So there were such issues that made the way hard. But now, if you talk about now, the majority of the trade just stopped.
The direct trade.
Yes,
right?
the direct trade, it doesn't exist now, I'll say.
Okay, and then we're still speaking about Gaza now. After the first fall of Bashar al-Assad, right? Some people also, including many people, they want to see, they see that Turkey they can do more, right, compared to most of the Muslim leaders, like, can they do the same thing in Syria, in Gaza, and Palestine? Would they do that?
I think Turkey is doing enough in Syria, and I mean, Turkey is the only country that stood up for the people of Syria. We accepted 3.5 million Syrian refugees. Turkey provided arms, know-how, and other skills to the Syrian opposition. And like every single nation in the Arab world, they gave up the idea of the fall of Assad.
Yeah.
But Turkey was actually secretly working towards that. So in terms of Gaza, Turkey's role is mostly limited to diplomacy. If we are speaking about a military solution against Israel, I think it's maybe a little bit out of touch.
Out of touch?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, because there is no international coalition. I mean,
Turkey will be left alone.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, there is no international coalition. Iran is seeking their own interests. Gulf regions, they are in a different world. Egypt is in a different world. No one is actually combining their agendas against what's happening in Gaza, which amounted to the level of genocide.
So this idea was never being discussed actually, right? Among
I don't think so. I don't think so. It requires a big unity between the Muslim nations, I would say, because I mean, such a military solution also should be followed by a consensus in the international community. So I don't think that this was ever mentioned in Turkish political circles.
But in terms of diplomatic support in this Palestinian cause, what can we expect from Turkey?
I think Turkey is doing a lot. Turkey is a country that is in NATO. We are represented in many big international institutions and very credible institutions. Now you can witness the change in rhetoric in international community, to be honest. Like now you can see Deutsche Welle can criticize Israel, which was...
Deutsche Welle, DWJ?
Yeah, DWJ, yeah. Now you can see very bold statements from European Union leaders with regards to what's happening in Gaza, and it wasn't the case like a couple of months ago. Now you see there is a rhetoric change about Israel, and this was the result of a very painstaking diplomatic work and like constantly telling people about what's happening and what Israel is doing in Gaza. So this change in rhetoric took lots of time and effort, and I think Turkey was one of the leading force behind that.
And now we're back talking about Syria. Is it true that Turkey is already established military base in Syria?
Turkey has so many military bases in Syria.
It is true.
Yeah, Turkey has so many military bases in Syria,
Turkey
especially
is present now. The armed forces
since long years. Yeah,
Turkey. And Israel know this.
Sorry?
And Israel know this.
Yeah, of course. So these military bases, they were established with the knowledge of everybody. Turkey was very, very vocal about building military bases in Syria. They are mostly located in the north.
Like the Afrin, right? Like Afrin and
yeah, Afrin, Idlib, and so many other locations, Azez, so many other locations. If your question is like building a military base near Damascus, near yeah, okay, near Palmyra, and maybe even southern Damascus, then the question is yes. Turkey, actually, the question is the answer is no, because Turkey doesn't have a military bases in these locations, but Turkey intends to establish military posts. You can call it bases or military posts simply, because for sure Turkey wants to share military expertise
with the Syrian.
With this, yeah, and because this is what they require. And Syria is still too fragile. They actually, if you look at the Syrian cabinet, the defense minister is a minister that actually won a war.
Won a war.
Yeah, I mean, do you see any other defense minister in the world that actually won a war? So they are actually very good. They have heart, they have expertise, they have endurance, everything. But I think for them to be a very stable country, like long-term stable country, I think they need much more. So this is where Turkey is going to be playing a huge role. This is what I believe.
Yeah. And Turkey also encourage other Arab countries to support Syrian government, especially like Qatar and Saudi Arabia, to provide the wages or the salary for the civil servants, right?
This is not only about salaries or financial support. So after Assad's fall, Turkey was a little bit anxious about other Arab countries. They didn't want Saudi Arabia or other Arab countries to be hostile towards the new Syrian administration. And Turkey was kind of convincing them that the new Syrian administration is not a threat to you. Militarily, ideologically, or by other means, it's not a threat. It's a peaceful administration that actually focuses on reconstruction. So if you can see the first remarks from President Erdogan after the fall of Assad, you can see he always calls on Saudi Arabia. Saying that, you know, you should join us, invest in Syria, work with the new Syrian administration for reconstruction and for peace in the region. And it was a success because Saudi Arabia responded positively to Turkey's calls. But because Turkey was afraid that a coalition of Arab states like United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Saudi Arabia is going to be formed against the new Syrian administration, and this was going to be very bad for Syria because, I mean, if there is no Saudi political, ideological, and also financial support to Syria, then it may be a very, very weak project, to be honest. So,
very hard project.
Yes, very hard project. Now, Lebanon, Jordan, to some extent Iraq, Saudi Arabia, they are very positive about what's happening in Syria.
Do you see them making sincere approach towards Syrian new government?
But in international politics, sincerity is out of question. What they need to do is to kind of build a trust-based relationship with the new Syrian administration based on mutual interests. So this is what you need to expect, realistically speaking. I mean, sincerity is another discussion.
So basically, the new Syrian president Ahmad Shara is taking Recep Tayyip Erdogan as a political mentor. Am I right? See?
I will say yes, but also he has his own story. He has his own story, his own mentality. But I think he sees Erdogan as a role model because I'm not saying this because I'm a Turkish citizen and not because I love Turkey, of course. But I think many nations in the Muslim world see Turkey as a role model. Modern, strong economic institutions with the high inflation, of course. Like an enjoyable country to some extent, and also keeping traditions and being a Muslim. So this is something that actually lots of Muslim nations, this is what I'm hearing from different friends. I think Ahmed Shara also seeing Turkey positively.
Good. Now we're talking for our last topic.
Okay.
So you see, Erdogan is very famous in Indonesia.
Okay. Tell me why.
I don't know. Because of what you said, and to some extent, some Indonesians they are forming a community. The name is Sahabat Erdogan.
Okay, Erdogan's friends.
Erdogan friends.
Okay.
Like that. And now they see that Erdogan is now on his last term as a Turkish leader, right? This is his second term as a president, and after this, they should be quit from the politics. What can we see Turkey after this? Are they we will see another leader from Turkey like Erdogan? What can we expect?
Well, this is a very hard question.
Very hard question.
A hard question. So, a good news for Sahabat Erdogan in Indonesia I don't think that Erdogan is very willing to step back from politics. I think not yet.
Not yet.
I think there are some possibilities that can open the way for Erdogan to run for another term. Okay.
That's a
So-
possibility.
Yeah, it's a possibility. Yes, of course. If
How?
there is an early election
Early election.
in Turkey, I mean the normal election are set for 2028. If there's an election for 2027, for example, he can run again because his previous term will not be counted as a full term. So he can run for a re-election in 2028 if there is if there is an early election. And the second possibility is a constitutional change. If there is a constitutional change that can open the way for Erdogan for re-election, if there is a new constitution, then the new elections will be based on the new constitution, not based on the other constitution. So if there is a consensus in Turkish parliament that can open the way for President Erdogan to run again, then it can be a possibility. And what I personally observe from his statements that he doesn't intend to step back from politics anytime soon.
Okay.
Yeah, so good news for
Sahabat
our
Group.
friends in Indonesia.
What about like Hakan Fidan and other people? Are they being prepared to replace Erdogan? Can you say that?
I don't know, this is very controversial. I cannot read the intentions of people from their eyes. But Hakan Fidan is very popular, I'll say, and there are some other people too. But you never know if they intend to do something. And so far, no one is expressed their genuine intention with regards to running or not running in the future.
Lastly, what about regarding the Ekrem İmamoğlu arrest? Do you see this as some effort from the current government to extend the Erdogan's reigning?
Well, I mean, sorry. If you look at the issue from the political perspective, then you will see lots of conspiracies, lots of different angles, lots of different comments, of course. The first thing will be for me to say is to expect the results from the judiciary. But if you look from outside with a little information about Turkey, then you will think, oh, this is a political case because one president is jailing a very popular mayor of Turkey's biggest city, and knowing that this person is going to be nominated for the opposition in the future. So if you look from this perspective, oh, this looks like a political case. Oh, the president is jailing his rival. But I mean, if you look at the court documents, there are some very serious allegations against İmamoğlu. And if you run for a big office in Turkey or anywhere in the world, you should be very careful with your transactions. I mean, for example, this is what we know for a fact that İmamoğlu is owning a construction company, and he didn't stop. The construction company didn't stop transactions, actually huge transactions after his election as a mayor. And I read some testimonies. For example, there was very suspicious transaction between İmamoğlu and his friends. I mean, İmamoğlu's friend buys a very prime land in Istanbul, and then the land is being transferred to İmamoğlu's company at a very cheap price. So there are some serious allegations in terms of this. But I mean, anywhere in the world, if you are running for a big office, then you'll be under scrutiny, and you should be careful about your financial transactions. Otherwise, if you are not very careful and if you are overly ambitious, then people actually, your rivals can use them against you. I mean, this is what's happening. This is my comment.
Masya-Allah. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Saljar, teman-teman, barusan ngomong-ngomong dengan İlker Sezer dari Turki Daily. Thanks so much for your time. Thank you so much for your time.
Of course,
Teşekkür
of course.
ederim.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you.